Hello and welcome to a special edition of Luminar Up and Running with Luminar 4.4. Well, I'm your host, Vanelli. Now, what we're going to show you today is everything you need to know about Luminar so you can be up and running in no time at all. I'll show you the different ways to use Luminar. I'll show you some of the really neat special tools that we have that are not found in any other software. All right? So let's begin. I'm going to open up Luminar, and here we are. Now, keep in mind, on the chat window, I'm going to try to monitor the chat the best that I can. So if you could, in the chat window, put information in there on, like, how, if you're able to hear me or stuff like that. In the questions and answer or the Q&A, that's when you put your questions in there, and in between each of the segments, I'll go back and answer those. All right. So just imagine this is us little coffee shop, and we're just hanging out, talking, and you're asking me a bunch of questions, and I'm showing you the software. All right. So let's begin. So first of all, there are three ways we can use Luminar. All right. We can use Luminar as a standalone program, like you see here, where you take full advantage of the library module or the library tools. And from here, I can go through, quickly view my images, select which of my images are my favorites, just go through. And if I like one, I can select P for pick. If you notice down in here, I can click on the heart, or I can give it a rating from 1 to 5 stars. I could even come over and set a color label, let's say red, for each of these images. All right. And you could do that either with the shortcut keys, or you could use it with the menus. So if I right click, I can select a fat flag, and here are the shortcut keys, a rating, and color labels. All right. And then once I have it done, I can come over here to the top menu, and I can show just my favorites. Or if I have, let's say, 1 stars or above, or if I have different colors set up. So these are things you're used to seeing in other programs. Here it is, if you're using it as a standalone program, the concept, of course, then is for you to have complete control over viewing all of your images. So imagine if you get done on a major photo shoot, you're out taking a bunch of nature photos, and you came back with 2,000 of them. Well, you have to have a way of bringing them into Luminar. And before we go any further, think of it this way. Luminar is an image editing and photo management software designed for anyone who loves photography or just like taking photos. All right? That's what Luminar is. So if it's a photo management program, we have to somehow ingest or bring those images in for Luminar to see. So remember that Luminar is much like a database. It's not going to store your files or your images inside the program itself. Your images are stored on your hard drive. They're safe and secure. It's non-destructive editing. So any changes you make using Luminar are non-destructive, meaning you can always go back to the original. All right? So with that being said, what Luminar is going to do for you is it's going to remember 3 things about that image. Where the image is located, so it has a reference on your hard drive where that image is. Any changes you've made to that image, any creative edits or creative tools that we used to enhance that image, and then any flags or any ratings that you've applied to it. So if you wrap your head around that, it's a catalog of your images, and it stores where those images are. So if you make a change to an image inside Luminar, here's what's really cool. If I were to change a file name on this image, it gets changed on my hard drive. If I change it on my hard drive, it gets changed here. All right? So, but I have to have a way of bringing the images into Luminar, and we can do that right here with the plus icon up on top. Excuse me. So with Luminar, Up on top here are the tools that'll be used the most. You can add a folder of images or just even add just a single image. You could view the grid mode. You know, you could change the size of the grid mode either with the drop-down menu or with the plus and minus. We can export our images, you know, if we want to use it for social media or for print. And over here, we can go into single view mode, or the grid mode. And then across the top are the three tabs, Library, Edit, and Info. And these open up the different panels that we'll be talking about in a little bit. So back onto the library module, and I'm going to select G for grid. I have all my images here. To ingest them, I just click on File, and then import images to a folder. That's one way of doing it. I can also come over here to the folders and click on the plus icon. And once I do, I can just browse my images or my folder, or choose my computer for a folder of images. Let's click on photography. And let's see, let me just pick butterflies. And when I do, well, I didn't have a whole image. I have one image in that folder, but so here it is here. And if I right click on this butterfly, I can come in and say show in Explorer or show in Finder. And it'll show me exactly where that is on my hard drive. All right. So I'm going to go back to the grid mode. And again, here's my collections. These just happen to be the favorite ones I've worked with. All right. So let me take a moment. And what I want to do is come over here and let's see if I have any questions. One moment. There we go. All right, I apologize. I didn't have that set up yet. So we could check. And if you have any questions, please put them in question and answers. All right. So that right there was the library pane or the library view. Just like the damn digital asset manager, I'm using this to organize my images for me. Because like I said, imagine you came back on that hike and you have 2,000 images. Well, your friends love you, but they don't want to sit through 2,000 images. So this is where you'll go through, select your favorites, and then once you select your favorites, let's do this here. My favorites. Once you select your favorites, I can come over here to an album and create an album here of favorite photos. Oh, if I can spell favorite right, let me rename it. There we go. So here's my favorite photos. I'll come back. I can select them all. And how I selected them was I clicked on the very first one, holding down the Shift key, clicked on the last one, or I'm going to deselect them all by Control or Command D, or select them all, Control or Command A. Now I have all of them selected. And if I just drag and drop them into the favorites folder, now the album here has all my favorites in it. All right. Now, what's really neat about this is imagine these are the images I want to edit or I want to create. Well, before I get too deep into the edit panel, what's neat by doing what we just did, if I come to the view menu and select show film strip, well, now these images here, there we go. So these images here will appear on the side of the tool strip. And so I'm only editing just those images, and I don't have to worry about the 2,000 other images that are in there. And again, if you were to show your family or friends, think of albums as a way of collecting the best of the best. So if I were to come to your house and you were to show me your images, you would go right to those albums and say, all right, here's my images, my portfolio of my nature images. Pull up the album, and then we can just zip right through those. All right. And there we have it. So we're back to the view. I want to click all. And if I were to click on the folder down here, and I'm going to view all the images. And we're back again. All right. So one moment, let me check questions again. Good, and don't be shy. Good. Hello, guys. Okay, good. So let's see. I'm trying to figure out the best way to show you guys these without duplicating my screen over and over. All right, so Denzel says, I use Capture One. Should I create a folder each time I edit a photograph in Luminar or drag as you described? That's a very good question. So if I'm not mistaken, soon we'll be working with you'll be able to use Capture One. I know on the Mac. On the PC is something, because of the operating system, is something we'll be working on. A good practice, and I'm going to go through this, Denzel, thank you, when I talk about using Luminar as a plugin for Photoshop and Lightroom. All right? So I'll show you that in just a moment. So again, the three ways we're going to use Luminar, as I mentioned earlier, one is a standalone program like we're used to using. So that's your digital asset manager. It has all the features that Luminar has to offer. Second way is using it as a Lightroom or a Photoshop plugin. And in this case, Denzel, it's the same concept. You'll be using it using it like we just said as a plugin, and I'll show you some of the best practices on how to do that. And the third way is using it as a single image editor. So if Denzel came to my house and said, Vanelli, here I have 5 images on this thumb drive. Could you look at them and let's do a collaborative edit? I can just plug the thumb drive in, import that single image, do all these cool effects to them, and then hand them back the thumb drive, and that image doesn't have to stay on my machine. All right? So while we just did this, I fired up Lightroom, or I'm sorry, Photoshop. So the next part is I'll show you how to use Photoshop and Lightroom as a plugin. So we already talked about how we're going to use Luminar here as a standalone. And before I show you the plugin part, and keep this in mind, all of this will still be applied whether or not you're using it as a plugin, standalone, or as a single image editor. You have all the tools at your disposal. So what I'm going to do is show you a couple of quick neat tricks. Let me hide the film strip. There we go. So we talked about the library module. Now the library panel. Now we're going to talk about the edit panel. So if I click on the edit button, the edit view is here and the edit panel is here. Let's go through some of the tools and then I'll show you how to use Lightroom and Photoshop as a plugin. This is so incredible the way the engineers designed this. Off to the right, down in here, we have 2, 4, 6, 7. We have our 7 icons here that open up other parts of the edit panel. So the tools are separated into essentials, and those are going to be the tools that we use on a regular basis. So the essential tools are the go-to tools when you want to develop your image. Then we have the creative tools when you want to get creative with your techniques, like replacing a sky, when you want to add sun rays or dramatic effects to an image. And then one of my favorites is the portrait tools. As a portrait and sports photographer, I mean, this is invaluable to me. So it's very valuable to me. And I love it to death because I can click on the portrait tools, and right from here, I have all the tools I need to work on a portrait without having to bounce back and forth. And then last, for those that are a little bit more experienced, we do have the Pro Tools. And with the Pro Tools, you'll find advanced contrast, the adjustable gradient, and then tools that you're used to working with, like the dodge and burn tool. All right? So let's pick an image just real quick. You know what? I'm going to come here for a moment. Yeah, we'll do this one right here. And I already know this had effects to it. And, oh, I'm sorry. So since we went through here, we went through the different tools. These are the 4. Now, the bottom one is our history tools. From here, do you remember we said Luminar is non-destructive? So if I click on the history tool, I can go back in time and it'll show you everything I did to this image since it was open. So I can go all the way back to the top and it'll apply all the changes again, or I can go to the bottom and start fresh. For this example, we'll start fresh. So that's your history tool. So once again, these tools here are going to help us develop the image and get creative. The history tool at the very bottom helps us to do undos. So if we make mistakes, we'd always undo them, or if we're not liking the direction of where we're heading, we'll click on the history tool. Now, the very top tool, we have layers, and then we have our canvas tools. Now, layers, just like in Photoshop, you're able to stack layers on top of each other. So imagine a layer is like a deck of cards that are see-through. So whatever you do on that on that bottom layer, it can be seen all the way to the top. And then if you make a change to the bottom layer, it'll get changed on the top layer. And we'll go through when to use layers. And last, we have our canvas tools. Here you have your traditional crop and rotate, the erase tool, clone and stamp, and then there's lens and geometry if you want to correct the horizon. All right? So I explained how or what the edit tools are. Let's see them in action. So for this image here, I know I have to improve color, detail, tone, and depth of this image. So I want to use the power of AI to do that for me. So AI Enhancer has 2 tools in here, the AI tools. The AI Enhancer tool, look at that. And then the AI Sky Enhancer. That right here, those 2 little sliders help replace these sliders. So that's your traditional develop tool. We call it light. So this is the traditional way of fixing this image. But because we use the power of AI, it automatically improved the color, detail, tone, and depth of the image. And what's cool about that is if I create what's called a look, which we'll go through in a moment, a look is like the recipe of all of this. I can apply it to all the images in that set. And because we used AI, it'll analyze each individual image or image individually and apply the best settings for that image based on what we did here. If we, let's say, the black slider, I'm going to enrich the blacks just a little bit for this image. Well, if I put -10, it automatically will put -10 for the rest of the images once I batch process them. Whether or not blacks need to be enriched or not, it'll have a hard value of -10. Whereas the AI tool automatically adjusts. We did it way up 95%. It'll automatically adjust for that. All right? But why do we have the light tool? So this way, if you want to have more control of the fine tuning, like in here, I do want to increase the shadows just a bit. There we go. And here's that smart control, which is really cool, or smart contrast. So I like that. And here again, I can adjust the color temperature. And we have our curves adjustments here. Let's make the whites a little bit lighter. There we go. So let's check out what we did before and after. One more time, before and after. I mean, how simple was that? So just by applying a few of these Luminar tools, we're able to take, a dull image here and add new life to it. All right? So let me come back in again. And let's use I'll use this image right here. All right. And because I've been using these images on a regular basis, I'm going to click on the history tool just to make sure that we don't have, oh, I dropped it out. One moment. Okay, while I'm here, let me check. Okay, good. Jeff asked, what's the difference between, I'm going to fire up Luminar again. Let me go back to what Jeff said, or Jeff asked. So Jeff said, what's in between albums and folders? So a folder is on your hard drive. It's directly attached. Whatever you have on your hard drive, it's in that folder. You make a change, it goes back and forth. So those are the images. The album is a copy. Now let me rephrase this. It's a link to where that image is. So you're not duplicating the image, you're just organizing it. So when you put it into an album, the album says, hey, within this album, these are the images I have. Here is a link to where those images are on your folders or in your hard drive. So I hope that answered it. Good. And yeah, Howard, it shouldn't be late. We've started, we started right on time. So I hope that's fine. Let me go back now. Here we go. All right, here we are. All right, so I clicked on history. I'll go to the original. Good. All right, so here we are with the original image again. And I'm working with the essential tools. First thing I want to do is adjust here. I like coming down and enhancing the blacks, just enriching the blacks. And I like to add a little color. I can either bump up the vibrancy and mute some of the colors on the side. So with saturation, think of this as global. It affects all the colors in the image, whereas vibrancy affects only the muted colors. All right, that looks good. Now here's AI structure. Watch this. If I want to add structure to everything but not his skin, I'll go to an extreme. Look at that. So it knows it's human aware, so it knows there's a person in the scene. So now I'm adding more structure to the content around it. Now, I showed you this because these are things I always do on a regular basis. This is where looks come in. So I don't want to keep repeating myself over and over and over again when I'm doing my editing. So think of these tools like a cooking recipe. The tools are your ingredients. The looks down in here are the actual recipe. So you're using all the ingredients and you put them together to create a recipe or a look to make your workflow much faster. So I'm going to come back again and start with the original image. Now, if I click on the looks button up on top here, it's going to open up the looks collection. I'm going to come over here and click on essential looks. And the very first one, let me hide this. Right here is my absolute favorite look because it already enriches the blacks, tones down the highlights, increases the shadows. So these are things I normally do on a regular basis. Look, and it's doing it for me. Here's a color. Now I have complete control. Let's see if there's, oh, there is a little color cast. I have complete control over this. And once I get the image looking the way I want, let's bring this out a little bit. So it gave me a great starting point. And notice on the side here, when you see the tool highlighted, it means that there's edits to that tool. All right, so you use somewhere in this collection, you use one of the tools. I'm going to come down here to the Pro Tools for a moment to show you as an example. I like what I see, but if I click on the advanced contrast, now I have control. Now I have control independently of the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. Whereas here with our tool, I did bring down the highlights, but that was a global change. All the highlights in the image, everything was adjusted. Here, I want to use attack just the highlights here, and then I can balance it out. The midtones, and again, balance it. And then, of course, the shadows. And then I can balance it out. And notice what I'm doing. When I go back and forth like this, I'm just tweaking it, giving my eyes a chance to adjust. And then I have to decide how is this affecting my image? Well, on each of the tools, we could toggle them on and off. Good. So I like this. However, once I made those changes, I noticed the color is a little too rich for me. Now, do you remember what I mentioned earlier? Because we used a tool in the professional tools, now it's highlighted. So at first glance, I could just look off to the side and know exactly what tool collections I started with. So I'm going to come back up to color. I'm going to desaturate a little bit more. There we go. It brought back the skin the way I want it. Look at that. And we're set. Now, here's what's really cool. If I decided that I'm going to use this recipe on all the images in that set, that's the shoot that we just did with this, I can come down there, save looks, underscore, let's say, give it a name, cooking. Now, instead of me having to start all over again on each of the images, well, I can come down to my user look collection. Let's do this. My user look collection. And then I can search for cooking. Now, I typically put an underscore when I want that look to be at the very front. And then when I'm done using that particular look, I could right click on it and I could change the name. So instead of underscore cook, once I'm done using it, I can just give it its full name, and now it'll be alphabetized within this group. All right. And by the way, if I right click on any look, I can show it in Finder or in Explorer, and here it is. So if my buddy Russ comes over to the house to visit, we collaborate on that shoot or on the editing, we can go back in and copy that look, and I can pass it off to him. When he gets home, he can put the look into his computer, and now we're done. Now he has the exact same look that we created. All right? So, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. I'm going to double check the questions again. Good. All right. And any chat? Oh, good. Ian says Capture One recognizes Luminar as a plugin on the PC now. That's awesome. All right. So there's no other questions. All right. Moving on. So notice I stayed in the essential category, all right, or the essential tools. So far, everything we've done, we've stayed in the essential tools. I bounced in to the professional just to show you this. Let's get creative. Let me look at, let's do a landscape maybe. Oh, I did it again. I have my system set up, and I apologize, to where I'm using a mouse and it sometimes gets a little too fidgety on me. And when I do that, I end up exiting out of the program. I don't know why I have it set, which I have to figure out why I have it set that way. Let me go back to landscape for a moment. Good. I'm sorry, I'll show you the screen in 1 second. If you have any questions, please drop the questions in. And I'm just waiting for it to come back up. Here we go. Got it. I did it again. All right, well, here's a good example because now I just realized it's not me. So I've been using this catalog so much, making changes and all the stuff to it. So I'm going to show you a little sneak trick that it's going to help us with what we're going through. So if you catch, like this case here, I clicked on one of the images and it kept doing something kind of strange on me. What I'm going to do is this. I go to File, and here we go. We go back again. And actually, well, while I got you here, I'll show you this. Where to store your Luminar Looks. All right. So, or I'm sorry, where to store your Luminar catalog. Well, I like to put my catalog in one folder. So I like having it in one folder. And let's make sure Luminar's not installed. It's up. Luminar is up. What I like to do is this. Here's my catalog. Show in Explorer or show in Finder. So I can get rid of this one now. One moment. There we go. So here's where the main catalog is. When you first install Luminar, typically it puts it into the Pictures folder, and then it makes another folder called Luminar 4 and puts a catalog in there. I personally like putting it in one area. So on my hard drive, I created a Luminar catalog. Now, any catalog I create, this is where I put it. I'm just going to close out of Luminar for a moment, which I don't have to, but I want to show you this. I'm going to double click on the main, because that's the one we're having a little issues with. This preview cache. I'm going to delete it. And then I'm going to let Luminar rebuild that cache. Because somewhere, one of those images, through the constant having Luminar on and off, I mean, we've been doing, I think, 106 episodes of Coffee Break. So I haven't cleaned up my Luminar catalog at all. So this is one way I can do it. Or the cache of the documents. Look at this. I can come in here and delete the cache documents. And once I restart Luminar and select my main Luminar catalog, that'll all rebuild. I'm going to leave the backups alone because these are the backups that Luminar is creating. So if you notice, if a system crashes or something happens, it goes back to one of those backups and it tries to restore it from that. So I'm going to leave this window open just so we can see it. I'm going to fire up Luminar again. Now, once I fire up Luminar, let's see, we're going to make sure we're using that same catalog. Here we are. All right, and look what it just did. So it rebuilt the previews and it rebuilt the system cache for me. So it's going to take just a little second for it to rebuild. And once it rebuilds, I'm going to grab this Ian's image. Then I can start going back through what we just did. So that was one way, and so it's kind of a good that when it did this to us right here, you're able to see firsthand in real time what I would do to get back up and running with the program. So if something happens, remember the most important file is your Luminar catalog. So this catalog right there should go with you when you back up your system, your computer. Make sure that's the file that gets backed up. So if anything happens to Luminar, you could uninstall Luminar. You need that file to have all the edits. In fact, if you put that image on an external hard drive along with your photos, you can open up any Luminar and open that up in any Luminar, my house, your friend's house, wherever, and it'll automatically act as if you were home on your machine. So that's a very powerful feature. All right. So here we are with this image from Gary McIntyre. I love what he did with the Scottish castle. What we're going to do, I'm doing that itchy thing again. We're going to start with a look, and we could choose to come in here, and we can select from any of the landscape looks. Let's do autumn color. And in one click, look at that. It automatically, here we go again, it automatically looks good. Before and after. All right? So I like how that's coming along. Now, let's look over to the side. It used the essential tools, which we already noticed. And it also used some of the creative tools. And what it did was it add a color style LUTs to the image. So here it is before and after. Look at that. So it used a lookup table to get that color looking the way we want. I want to add a little bit more texture to this, or more of a dramatic. So I'm going to get creative, click on the dramatic tool, and I want to really look at that. I want to increase this. Now, if I click on advance, I'm going to bring the saturation up a little bit because I don't want to desaturate it. And the brightness looks pretty good. So before and after. You see how it's adding that dramatic flair to this image. All right, now, while we're in the creative tools, let's replace the sky. And I'm just going to select, let's see, sky 5. Now here's the mountain, so it knows where the mountains are, it knows where the sky is. See, that sky does not match this scene. So let's come down to dramatic. See what the dramatic skies do. And keep in mind, I'm going to keep coming down, I can even add my own custom skies to this. Okay, that's a little bit better. Before and after. Ooh, I like that. And then while I'm here, I can add a little sun rays. And I'm going to bring it up right about here because that's where the sun looks like it's coming in. That's it. How is it affecting the overall look of the image? Penetration is really cool because, look at that. It knows enough how to show through. And I'm leaving it in a very stronger amount just because I want to see what it's doing. I click on the advanced tools or the advanced settings, the radius of the sun, the glow of the sun, good. And adjust, maybe some of the warmth, good. And then the warmth of the sun rays. Oh, look at that. And you see how it's affected the entire scene? Now I'm going to come back and dial it back. And bring back some of the, there we go. Here. That's good. And then I'm going to take this and move it off. There we go. And maybe do a little more length. There. So enough, just enough to where it's adding a little bit extra to the scene, but not enough to where you look at that and go, man, that's totally fake. All right. But that just gave you an example. And for this particular shot, I'd rather not have it in, but I like where this is at, where this is going. So we worked on the creative tools and the essential tools. I'm going to come back to the essential tools for a moment. I want to show you the vignette tool. This is so incredible because I get to select the center point of that vignette. I'm going to go to an extreme just so you can see exactly where it's heading. Good. And I'm feathering it right about there. All right. So now I'm able to pinpoint where that vignette's going to be. I'll dial back the amount and then the size. And here's the part that's really cool about this. I can add inner light just to that section here. So once I have it kind of tweaked the way I like it, good, turn it on and off to make sure it's making some difference. There it is. All right, so we have all that set. Now, oh, and one more thing while we're here, let's see. This image isn't a good one for what I want to show you next. This one will be. So for this image here, we're going to come in and, again, back to the creative tools. Here's AI Augmented Skies. I want to add, let's say, birds to the scene. I'll check out the different birds we have. Oh, that's not bad. Look at that. Or we could add a single cluster. Or even so, okay, I like this here. Now, I got the tools, I got the birds here. I want to place them. So now at this point, I can make them larger or smaller. If I want it to look like they're more off into the distance. It's neat because look at this. It goes behind the building. So this is the part why it's AI. Good. And then I have it set. I mean, how neat is that? So if I wanted to add just a little, if I want to augment the reality, I can add birds to it. You could get crazy. You could add a space shuttle to it. You could add a moon. But it's best if you just wanted to add a few extra things to an image. This is one way of doing it. And you saw what just happened. Because it's AI, it knows that there's a building here. It puts the birds behind the building because that's where they would have been. So we touch based on those. Now, let me show you some of the portrait tools. Now, remember, so far everything we're doing is part of the all the tools I'm showing you right now can be used with both standalone program and a plugin for Photoshop and Lightroom. So here we are. Let's just do a real quick edit. We'll use the portrait tools or the portrait looks. And I'm going to look down in here. Let's see how a female looks. Good. Before. After. Okay, not a whole lot of change, but I like it. I can add a dreamy portrait to it. Good. Once, oh, I like this. All right, good. Let's start with this one here. So it already added some of the cool features for me. I just want to focus strictly on the portrait tools, all right? So here's Skin Enhancer. What I want to do is I want to smooth her skin, but I don't want to do so much that we lose her freckles. I mean, that's part of her. Notice how I can increase it and the freckles are remaining. If there were a shine, like in this area is here, I'm going to bring out some of the shine. Do you notice it? I can tone back the shine on the image, and then this AI skin what we call the blemish removal. If there's any blemishes in the scene, I can remove it. And I'll show you a really good example when that's great. All right, so here we are with Portrait Enhancer now. Watch this. It detects where the face is. I can even relight the face. So imagine if you didn't have a reflector with you and you want to bounce a little bit more light into her face, like I just did here. Look at that. It brings that extra to it. Eye enhancer. I really like to bring that up. Look at that. I'm going to bring that out once again so you can see it. Before and after. Awesome. And then dark circles under the eyes. Doesn't seem like it does a lot, but look at that. And for the rest of them, they're self-explanatory. You know, I don't need to slim her face because it looks good the way it is. I don't want to make the eyes too big. I can improve the eyebrows. Look at that. Now here's what's really cool too. 3 tools to make her lips look better. We can saturate them more. Bring out the redness in the lips. and then make the lips a little darker looking. Oh, look at that. And then, of course, make her teeth a little whiter. All right, now that's a little too much on her lips. So let's bring that back a little. There we go. Before, after. There we go. Before, well, that's after. Here's before. Look at that. So, I mean, can you see as a portrait photographer why I get so excited? Now, in doing this, the face is a little washed out, so I'm going to dial it back a little bit. And we're set here. Great. I have one more, let's say the Orton effect. This tool is so neat. It's gonna sharpen the image, at the same time blur parts of it. So it knows enough that this is a face. If you notice, it's sculpturing the face. Look at this. Because that's what I used to do, is I'd grab the dodge tool and just trace around the outside of her face to draw the attention. Now here's what every tool has: edit mask. So I could put that beautiful effect on the image, but there's parts of the image I don't want it to have the effect. I can click on the edit mask. I'll choose a brush. Let's say erase the effect at 100% opacity. And I want to erase the effect just on her eyes. And typically, under the nose, in fact, let me turn this off for a moment. There we go. Under her nose. And we're good. And if I click on the mask visibility icon, it'll actually show me where I'm applying that mask. And before and after, and apply it. So once again, I mean, as a portrait photographer, can you see how I'm excited? Because it's going to save so much time and energy. Now, let me check our time. We have plenty of time here. So you saw some of the tools, and Luminar is purpose-centric, not tool-centric. We focus on problem solving. What problem do we have with this image? Her skin needs to be smooth. Great. Here are the tools that'll help you do that. So instead of us masking out, in the old days, we would have to sit there and mask each and every part of that face to get the skin smoothing or to remove blemishes. In fact, let me show you this one real quick. So here's another example. The skin has blemishes. One click. Ready? Magic. Boom. Look how cool that was. Before. Oh, I did it again. Before and after. Okay, while I'm here, one moment. Let's see if there's any more questions. Oh, good. We have lots of questions. Okay, when would you just use the adjustment layers? I use them a lot, but don't quite understand the blend mode. Awesome. Yes, this video will be available afterwards, and you will find it on skylum.com/academy, which I'm going to pull it up real quick to show you. So here we are. You'll come down to the classes, and you'll see past classes here. This is where you'll find it. So the one we are doing today is here, skylum.com/academy. And then you'll also see the different classes we've been doing, these coffee breaks, and we have behind the scenes. There's a lot of tutorials. And if you have questions, again, you'll be able to click on the user manual. This by far is the absolute most important part of Luminar. Actually, I have it in Chinese. So why do I have it on Chinese? It's interesting. I wonder where I put that. I'm not quite sure why I have my language set to Chinese. In fact, look at this. If I'm inside Luminar, help, and here's a user guide right there. So from inside Luminar, I can go to it, and let's see, one moment. All right, anyways, it's not typically in Chinese, so that's something I will change. But anyway, so we have that set here, all right? Now, like I said, there's our Skylum Academy. So I hope that answered the question. So here we are again, before and after, all right? So that's where that blemish removal is just absolutely amazing. Now, to use, and I'll come back to the layers question in a moment, to use this as a Lightroom or Photoshop plugin, the first thing you need to do is make sure the plugins are installed. And sure enough, it's Photoshop and there's Lightroom. Now I'm going to close out of this, and I am in Photoshop. Now I just realized something. Some of the shutdowns is when it runs out of memory. So the system is shutting down because my system resources are being piled up. And I just realized I had Photoshop and then Lightroom installed, Photoshop, Lightroom, Luminar, and if you had Capture One, and along with all those tabs I have in Google Chrome, it's taxing your system. So it's important that when you're doing major editing, shut everything down as much as you can, and just put the essential programs up. All right. So here I am in Photoshop. I'm going to double click and let me open up a single image. And typically I put everything under photography, and let me see which image I want to grab. So actually right here, I don't have the image I want. So let me pull it from one of my drives here. Let's see if I can find Garrett. Oh, there we are. Good. All right. So let me grab. I'll grab this one right here. Unless I see the original. Actually, I do right here. Garrett. Boom. Perfect. All right. So now I'm inside Photoshop. Oh, I did it again. Open. There we go, Garrett. And we just had them. Here's his PSD. We don't want to use that one. I want to use the raw file. Oh, here we are. There. Open. Now open the image. There we go. All right. So when or how could you use Luminar with Photoshop or Lightroom? Well, from here, I can do my cropping ahead of time. And let's say for this image here, we want to crop it like this. So before I begin my editing, I want to do something like this. Good. And what I should have done is put that out here. But no problem. I'll just grab this. Jump into a new layer, transform it. There we go. All right. So let's say this is the image I have, and I want to crop it right to here. Great. One more time, and delete. Good. All right. So now that I have the image, let's say this is the image we started with. All right. If I'm going to right click on the image itself, and I like to start with a smart object. And the reason why we go with a smart object is now Luminar is to become a smart filter, meaning I can make any changes I want inside Luminar, and I can always go back and continue with those changes. So filter, and I'm going to click on Skylum 4. There we go. Now Luminar is going to, the plugin is going to fire up, and once it comes up, now we have the power of using Luminar from inside Photoshop. So looking at it from this perspective, what are things you can do inside Photoshop that you can't do inside Luminar? Well, you know, inside Photoshop you have liquefy. I can expand the canvas. So those are things I would do inside Photoshop because it's a graphics program. That's what it's designed to do. I'll do all that stuff in that program, and then the power stuff, replacing the skies, enhancing the skin, creating them really cool looks. Then I could do all of that, which would take a long time in Photoshop to do. I would do that in Luminar and then bring it back into Photoshop and make additional tweaks and changes to it. All right, one moment. Okay, Photoshop just locked up on me. I should do a system reboot. Oh, I just realized something. Why? And I apologize ahead of time. I just realized that Windows is waiting for an update. So let me pull this in here. So I'm trying to figure out while we're live, while we're having issues here, and sure enough, Windows had an update this morning, and I told it no, but as you know, Windows, it decides to do what it wants to do. All right, so here I am inside Luminar, all right? So I'm inside Luminar, and I want to quickly create this and do some really cool effects to it. Well, the very first effect, if we go to the looks, and I click on portrait, well, here's the portrait looks, and I'm going to scroll through. All right, let's go to the essentials. And dramatic. Oh, here we go. Dramatic is the one I want. Yep, there it is. Bip. In one click, I'm gonna let the dramatic tool work its magic. So here's before, here's after. So the sports grit look is something that I've worked on for years. Watch how fast I can make it look like my original sports grit look. Look at that. I like it. Let's come up to the essential tools, detail enhancer. I'm really going to make that crunch look on the subject. Look at that. Before and after. Ooh, I'm getting my look going. I can come down to the Pro Tools. I love this advanced contrast or advanced adjustable gradient. Bottom, I'm only going to use just the bottom. Look at this. I can distinguish between the top and bottom and independently adjust what I want. Good. Before, after, it's coming along great. Let's go to the portrait tools. Enhance the eyes. I'll not enlarge them. Here we go. Really bring those eyes out. I'm not quite certain about the dark circles. That's fine. And let's throw a little light on his face. Look at that. Good. Skin softening. He's a guy. I really don't want to apply a lot of it. In fact, I'm going to leave it alone. And one last thing I'll do to this is advanced contrast. Look at that. I'm going to bring back some of the skin tone. Good. And then last, bring out some of the shadows a little. Yeah, look around the hair. Done. All right, there we have it. Before, after, in such a really short time, I just recreated my whole sports grit look that took me a long time to create. Now I'm going to just save it. And let's call this the new sports grit. Now, If I had to do that in Photoshop, I can, but man, this is going to take a lot of tools to do this. So it took a lot of time to here. I just added a bunch of tools that I like, that I knew that would give me the result I wanted, created the look for it, and now I'll hit apply so it brings it back into Photoshop. Now I have it for the future ones, and I can just quickly go in, apply it, and we're done. So that's how you would do a combination of Photoshop into Luminar. And we're back into Photoshop. Here we are in Photoshop. And by the way, the smart object, if I double click on it, it opens up the container, and in that container is the image that we were just working with. All right? So we have that set. And like I said, we do the same thing inside Luminar, inside Lightroom. We can open up the program. We can open up Luminar from inside Lightroom and capture one and so on. So while it's firing up, the concept is still the same. I have all the tools ahead of me. What I don't have for Photoshop is the crop tool. So the crop tool inside Luminar is disabled if you're using it as a plugin for Photoshop, because Photoshop wants that pixel to come back, the size of it to be identical when it's sent out. It wants that coming back in. All right. So notice we're inside Luminar. Let me try that again. One moment. Good. Maybe I need to hit refresh. Yep. Just one moment. Windows, you're really having fun with you right now. So 1 second. I just reran it again. And let's see if it's going to do it. And it decided not to. That's fine. All right. Maybe Windows is giving me my hint that my time is coming up. There we go. All right. So while we're doing that, let me see if it's going in. Nope, we're good. I'm sorry. We exit out of NDI and re-add it. Good, we'll let that come in. Okay, while I'm letting that come in, I do want to look again at any of the questions coming in. Good, and we're set. One moment. All right. And the questions were good. One moment. And here we go. Oh, YouTube, that's where we were looking. All right. And the questions are set. Oh, here we go. Good. All right. I managed to delete the catalog for a project, but I still have a backup folder. Is there a way to recover the catalog? That's one of those things where you desperately have to make sure that you have a 3-2-1 backup plan, 3 copies of your data, 2 stored locally, 1 stored off-site. Once you delete that catalog, that holds everything. The backup is the behind-the-scene things that the catalog needs to rebuild itself. So I hate to say that. What you can do is there is software, David B. So David, what you can do is shoot me, Vanelli@skylum.com. There is software that you could purchase that does a recovery. And I've had excellent results with that. Or you can just look up online, recover deleted files, and hopefully it'll help you recover that. All right? Well, guys, we're right out of time. We're a little 5 minutes over, so I apologize. Thank you so much for joining us. So I showed you why or how to use Luminar as a standalone program, a Lightroom or Photoshop plugin, and Capture One, and how to use it as a single image editor. And for that single image editor, it's the same things that we've been doing, and the difference is it doesn't get stored on your computer. You hand it back off on the thumb drive to your friend, and you're just using it to quickly enhance your images and move on to the next. So, well, guys, thank you so much. If you have questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and we'll do our best to answer them after the show. Well, I'm Benelli, the Director of Education for Skylum. Thank you so much for watching.